Every abandoned place keeps something of the people who left it, a shape worn into a doorway, a silence that feels occupied. We tell ourselves these places are empty, but some part of us has always known that empty is not the same as gone. In a small village in the Czech Republic, there is a church that stopped pretending. Walk through its doors on a gray afternoon, and you will find the congregation exactly where it has always been. Sitting in the pews, bowed in prayer, standing silently along the walls, hooded, faceless, watching you come in. 32 of them, and every single one is a ghost. This is the Church of St. George in the village of Lukava, and the story of how it filled with ghosts is stranger and far sadder than any haunting. Lukova is a tiny place, around 700 people, more than 200 kilometers from Prague, the kind of village most maps forget. Its church was consecrated in 1352, a Gothic building on a hill that watched over the town for 6 centuries. It survived the Hussite Wars. It survived a fire in 1786. Each time the villagers rebuilt it, because that is what you do with the church your ancestors are buried beside. It was the center of everything. It was where they were baptized, married, and mourned. And then in 1968, during a funeral, the roof fell in. The mourners were inside when it happened. Part of the ceiling gave way above their heads and came crashing down into the church, and everyone ran for the doors. No one was killed, but something broke that day that could never be repaired. Because a roof collapsing is one thing, a roof collapsing during a funeral while you are burying your dead is something the human mind cannot leave alone. The villagers decided the church was cursed, that it was an omen, that the building itself had turned against them. So they stopped going in. They held their masses outside in the open air, in the shadow of a building they no longer dared to enter, and the Church of St. George was left to rot. And ROT it did. Through the long decades of communist rule, no one came to save it. The paintings were stolen, the statues were stolen, the clock was taken down from the tower, even the bell was carried off. Everything of value stripped away, piece by piece, until all that remained was a hollow stone shell on a hill, its roof open to the sky, filling slowly with weeds and rain and birds, a church that an entire village had quietly agreed to forget. For more than 40 years, that is what it was, an empty, crumbling, cursed thing that people crossed the road to avoid. And then a young art student came looking for exactly that kind of place. His name was Jakub Hadrava, and in 2012 he was studying art at a nearby university, searching for a site for his final thesis. When he found the abandoned church at Lukava, the silence of it, the ruin of it, the story of the funeral and the curse, he knew he had found it, and he had an idea that was either beautiful or deeply unsettling, depending entirely on how you look at it. He would give the empty church its congregation back. He took sheets and canvas and cloth and draped them over living people, fellow students who agreed to sit still while he worked. Then he coated the fabric in plaster and let it harden, capturing the exact shape of a human body beneath a shroud. When he lifted the hardened forms away, he had figures, hollow, ghost-white, faceless figures, frozen in the postures of the living. Sitting, kneeling, bowing their heads. He made 32 of them, and he placed them throughout the church, in the pews and the aisles and the doorways, filling the empty building with a silent, praying crowd. The effect is staggering. Walk in and the church is full. A congregation gathered for a service that will never begin. Every worshiper draped in white, every face hidden. They do not move. They do not turn toward you. But you feel, immediately and completely, that you have interrupted something. That you are the intruder here, and they are the ones who belong. Word spread. A video appeared online. And the cursed church that the village had abandoned for 40 years suddenly had visitors again, thousands of them from all over the world coming to sit among the ghosts. But here is where the story stops being a ghost story, because the question everyone asks, standing in that church, is a simple one. Who are they? Who is the artist trying to show us? And the answer is the part that will stay with you long after the white figures fade from your mind. The ghosts of Lukava are not invented, they are not there to frighten you. Each one stands for a real person, a member of the congregation that used to fill those pews long before the roof ever fell, because for most of its history this was not a Czech village. It sat in a region called the Sudetenland, along the old borderlands, where for generations the population was largely German. The people who built up this church, who prayed in it every Sunday, who filled these exact pews for lifetimes, were Sudeten Germans, and after the Second World War, they were expelled. All of them. In the aftermath of the war, ethnic Germans across Czechoslovakia, as many as 3 million people, were driven out of the country, forced from homes their families had lived in for centuries, marched to the border and expelled into Germany and Austria. Whole villages emptied in a matter of weeks. The congregation of St. George, the men, the women, the children who had knelt in those pews their entire lives were simply gone. Not dead. Removed. Erased from the place they had always belonged to. The church did not lose its people to a curse in 1968. It had lost them decades earlier to history. The collapse of the roof was only the final blow to a building that had already been hollowed out. By the time the ceiling came down during that funeral, the true congregation had been missing for years, because the people who once filled those pews had been driven out and forbidden ever to return. And that changes everything about what you are looking at. The ghosts in that church are not there to haunt you, they are there to remember. Each white figure is a stand-in for someone who really sat in that exact spot, someone whose family was torn out of this village and never came back. The artist did not fill an empty church with an invention, he filled it with the people history took away. He made visible the congregation that was erased. So when you stand in the doorway of St. George's and you feel that you are the intruder, that these silent figures are the ones who truly belong there, you are not imagining it. In a sense, you are right. They were here first. This was always their church, which leaves you standing in front of a question the little church on the hill refuses to answer. Are the ghosts of Lukova only statues, plaster and cloth, an art project, a clever way to save a crumbling building? Or did the artist not create anything at all, but simply make you able to see what was always sitting in those pews, an entire congregation that never got to leave on its own terms, still gathered, still waiting in the only home they ever had? The church is not abandoned anymore. The money the ghosts brought in has repaired the very roof that fell in 1968. There are services again now, from time to time, and concerts and visitors every week. The living have finally come back to St. George's, but they will never have it to themselves again, because the congregation is already seated. It has been seated for a very long time, and it is not going anywhere. So the next time you walk into a place the world has called empty, look a little closer at the silence, at who might still be sitting inside it, because empty is not the same as gone. The people of Lukava learned that the hard way, and their church has been trying to tell us ever since.